Hello. We are going to talk about a project that I've been working on the last 2 weeks to create a new entry widget for the CocosDB interactive SQL shell. So here you see a quick demo before we go into details. So we have a prompt. We can enter some commands. So currently, like, it's just a prototype. It doesn't actually execute the SQL just yet, but it does support multi-line entry, and it probably collapse the prompt away from the input, refreshing the screen, and it also supports a very long line with text wrapping so that you don't see words cut at the end of the line. And well, this is it. I mean, there are more features we're going to talk about, but before we get there, we're going to look a little bit about the background of this. So what we're talking about is the prompt in the Cocos SQL shell, which is able to run SQL and enter input. So what we have here is a very ancient library called libedit from the BSD operating system. And this supports line edition. So you can navigate with keyboard shortcuts. Next word, previous word. You can edit word. You can remove characters. Sounds like it's a pretty traditional line editor, but it does support very long lines, so that you can navigate across multiple lines and enter very long inputs. So that traditional editor works well, but we have certain shortcomings with it. In particular, it doesn't really understand multi-line entry. So if I enter a very long line, so what I just had a minute ago, this is fine, but it's not really multi-line entry. Like, it's just a very long line that wraps around. If I want to enter multiple lines like this, it's possible, but I don't have a multi-line editor. If I press the up key, I will recall the history, but the start of the entry I typed, the select on the first line, is not accessible to my cursor anymore, meaning that I can't really edit the lines I have entered already. So that's one problem. Another thing is that if I have entered a previous multi-line entry like this, and I want to navigate through it, it's actually kind of cumbersome. I cannot use the up arrow. The up arrow is always navigation through the history. And I would like here to be able to go to the select word directly, but I have to scroll left with the arrow. So maybe all this will be simpler if I enable screen. I'm going to show you the keys I'm typing in. All right, so here now I have the keys at the bottom right of the screen. So if I want to navigate to this select word, I have to press the left key forever. So that's very cumbersome. Another thing that's a problem is that if I copy paste, if I enter a long input with multiple lines like this, and now I want to copy paste what I typed in. If I copy paste all of this, it will copy paste actually the prompt, including with a prompt at the beginning of each line, meaning that I can have a clean copy of the text I've pasted. And finally, another thing that's kind of a bummer with this tool is that if I have a very long input and I do resizing of my terminals, and it will redraw the terminal, and it's kind of a mess. So the resizing of terminal is not optimal. So based on all these things, we knew already we had some issues that were unpleasant. The drop that caused the bucket to topple over was a bug in recalling the history. If I press Ctrl-R to search in a previous history entry, I will get the match. But now, after I have selected my history entry, if I press a navigation key, such as the right key is not immediately recognized, and instead I get a mistaken escape character introduced in my text. And that is profoundly incorrect. what we would like to see is that after we select some input, if we press one of the arrow keys, it should navigate, and it currently is not possible. That is an outright bug, and it's actually pretty hard to fix. So we don't like it too much because of all these reasons. Now, we're going to look at how we've done it, but the key to do this improvement was the discovery of a library called Bubbles. So Bubbles is a Go widget library and a framework called Bubbletea implemented by a group of people called Charm Charm Bracelet, the organization on GitHub. And they have invented a framework that is inspired from the Elm model view controller framework for creating control applications. And the Bubbletea widgets are all implemented through this framework. And there is a bunch of existing widgets. And one of the things that attracted my attention was the text area widget, this one here. So if you look at the text area widget, let's see a demonstration of it. It's here. We see that we can support a multi-line entry. And if I have a lot of text, I can scroll up through this text. And if I navigate here, if I resize the window, I get a clean display. And that widget is interesting. Now, one thing that is a little bit worrying is that this widget here does not really support a couple of features that we care about. In particular, it only has one prompt, the character you see at the far left of the screen. The enter key, even after a semicolon, just adds more lines. So we don't have like an ability to finish the entry with the enter key. And then we also miss a couple of features that the original cockroach prompt has. For example, if I do select foo, I can press escape U to get uppercase, and in this prompt here, escape U or alt U does not do anything. So there is some kind of a feature parity mismatch that we care about. Another thing that we care about also is that people who use the command line, they really want to be able to suspend the current applications. That's typically done using the Control-Z shortcut. And here, Control-Z doesn't do anything. In a regular program, we would expect it to suspend the current command such that after, when we restore it, we get our prompt back. And this text area, I think, does not do this. So there is more work around this. So what I did, I looked into all this, and I said, let's extend this widget. It's very interesting because the Bubbletea frameworks has a architecture such that it's very easy to layer widgets upon the widgets. The architecture is what's called composable. You can compose individual widgets to create bigger widgets without having to change the interfaces by which the framework is operating and displaying the widgets on the screen. So what I did is I took the text area widget and then made a couple of changes to it, including fixing a couple of bugs, and came up to this new widget that we are going to talk about now. So this new widget here, some of the things that were like probably no-brainers is the idea of the control key shortcuts to refresh the screen, to clear the screen with Control-L, and we have the suspending the process, which doesn't seem, suspending the process with Control-Z. And then we also have the ability to complete the input with a semicolon. So if I have a semicolon at the end, I get finally the entry finalized. And if I don't, I get an extension of my prompt with some kind of intelligence, which is that if I am not at the last line of my input and I press enter key, I get an additional line in the middle. I only get the end of my input if my cursor is at the end. So that's really entry intelligence that the original widget doesn't have. Another thing that you can see here as well, which is that this height of the widget is dynamically extended as we add more input and reduced as we get less input. That will also operate properly at the edges of the screen. So if I have a large input is large, higher than my screen, then the widget will not exceed the size of the screen. And that will ensure that we can navigate properly. So that's something that the original text area widget doesn't do. Another thing that you started to see here is history navigation. So we see up arrow, so Control P, Control N, Alt, Escape P, Escape N, with an interesting feature, which is that if you are in a multi-line history entry and you press the up key, you will get navigation inside the entry, whereas if you are at the top line and you press up, you get to the previous history entry. Likewise, if you are at the end of the recalled history, you press down, you get to the next entry. But if you're in the middle of a multi-line entry, you press down, you get to the next line. So that's something that the original libedit is not able to do. You can also do a search through the history. So foo has not been entered here. So let's select foo. And then if we press Ctrl R and we enter foo, we get a completion on foo. And here we see this bug fix from the things that we didn't really like with libedit. Here, if we press the left key or the right key, we get proper navigation to the position we care about, instead of having this escape character inserted in the output. So this is something that that required a little bit of work, but it was really a layer on top of the text area. And so most of the work is being done by text area itself. So something that's really cool is that with this prompt now, we can enter very, very long strings. So what you see here is a string that is composed of multiple lines. And each of the lines has a word wrap. And there is absolutely no complexity here. It will just edit it, and it will also ensure that we get a rewrapping if we resize the input. And there is everything here is handled automatically by the framework and the text area widgets. We don't have to do it in our own line editor. And then the cherry on top of the cake is that I also added to the text area widgets through that layering the support for the uppercase, lowercase, capital case, which was in the libedit as well. And that's pretty much it. So that's in terms of feature parity about it. That shows all the things we can do, but I did mention that we had a little bit of a trouble with the original libedit, which is that we can't copy paste. So here you see we would have, in fact, the same problem if we are copy paste, but this library, which libedit doesn't have, has an option to temporarily erase the prompt. So the shortcut by default is Alt period. And when you do Alt period, you still get all the power of the line editor, but the prompt has disappeared, and then Alt period will put the prompt back. So this way you can switch between having and having no prompt. And the thing is intelligent. If you happen to have a very long input and you remove the prompt, it will rewrap properly and then rewrite properly when you re-add the prompt. So everything here is dynamic. So there's a lot of magic thanks to the text area widget. And very little I had to do this, like changing the prompt attribute on the text area is mostly sufficient to get this behavior. So good times. So that finishes the demo for how this widget works. What we need to do from then on, there is a number of PRs that I sent to the upstream package to fix a couple of bugs and shortcomings in the text area widget. There is missing key bindings. There is a bit of a weird memory allocation problem. There was the new feature for uppercase, lowercase, capitalized transpose. I also sent upstream, and the support for multiple prompts also upstreamed. So all this is now subject to review by the Charm developers, probably this person here who has implemented most of the text here widgets, mass, Lalini, and we are going hopefully to chat more and maybe make more improvements together. And the result widget is now available in this repository here, the dr-knz Bubbline repository. There is a little bit of a demo here, example programs. The other more comprehensive example is in the example directory. And hopefully I will add soon a little wrapper that will capture the widgets into a getLine API that is equivalent to the one used in CockroachDB, so we can import it straight into CockroachDB. So that's all, folk, and thank you for watching.